Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
I've spoken to people who've had trouble with their new Mustang Mach-E, and I'm not crazy about the Mustang Mach-E. I've got no problem with them making an electric car over there at Ford Motor Company. But calling a four-door vehicle a Mustang is a grievous error. However, that's not what we're here about. We're here to talk about safety defects and what's causing all the hubbub in this community. Phoebe Wall-Howard of the Detroit Free Press, the paper I delivered as a young man, wrote this story about 2021 and 2022 Mustang Mach-E owners who slapped Ford with a federal lawsuit over a safety defect. So Ford's being sued, which is not news. Big companies get sued all the time. But 3 owners of Mustang Mach-E's have filed a federal lawsuit against Ford Motor Company, claiming the automaker has known of a design flaw in its popular electric vehicles that causes them to lose power while driving down the road and has not figured out how to fix the problem. Now, the lawyer out of Costa Mesa, California, who filed the case, says companies go through recalls all the time, but when you have damages that affect a safety issue and the company doesn't appear to have a solution, then you get into a problem. Nobody wants to drive around a car that may stop working while they're driving. I'm shocked they still have these cars out on the road. And if, in fact, it is a safety problem, there would be a recall coming. So, Ford spokesperson Kathy Hargett told the Free Press on Monday, company does not comment on active litigation, which she just did. Although I guess she didn't comment specifically about it, but the lawsuit was filed in the U.S. District Court in the Eastern District of California, raises questions about a uniformly designed defective high-voltage battery main contactor that could overheat, thereby immobilizing the vehicle or making it lose power during operation. The contactors on these vehicles are prone to fail during ordinary and foreseeable driving situations. The lawsuit also says Ford has actual knowledge that because of the way in which the battery contactors were designed and integrated into the vehicles, the contactor switch could suddenly fail during normal operation, cutting off engine power and certain electrical systems in the cars, which in turn disables key vehicle components, safety features, or other vehicle functions, leaving occupants vulnerable to crashes, serious injuries, and death. Now, Ford says they're unaware of any injuries or deaths related to the problem. The lawsuit represents owners and lessees of vehicles built between May of 2020 and May of 2022, specifically 2 people from California and 1 from Pennsylvania. The lawsuit said these customers were informed of the recall, but their Ford dealers have yet to correct the problem, and it is not clear if Ford has a true solution to the battery overheating issue. So this has happened before, where a manufacturer spots a safety problem. They go to NHTSA, they say, we need to have this recalled, we're going to issue a recall. They go through a whole process. They issue the recall and they notify owners of the problem. And the recall process generally says the manufacturer then must fix the vehicles to eliminate the safety defect. The problem, of course, is either A, how do you fix it, or B, do you have what you require to fix it? And so, for instance, with the Takata airbags, they recalled millions of cars for bad airbags, which means they had to replace millions of airbags, which they did not have laying around. So it took them a while to come up with the parts. On the other hand, there have been situations like the Chevy Bolt electric issue where there are problems with the battery packs. And it took them a while to figure out what was wrong with them. And once they figured it out, then they had to go in and say, okay, we got to inspect all these battery packs and replace the defective ones. The first one that I mentioned there, talking about the Takata airbags, everyone knew what the problem was. Everyone knew what the fix was. With the battery packs for the Bolts, it was a little trickier, because they go, well, there's an electrical problem that sometimes causes car fires. How do we fix it? So here the issue is, do they have to put in a new part? Do they have to redesign a new part? What's going on? So the lawsuit claims that Ford should have disclosed to the plaintiffs and other customers the defects at the time of purchase or lease over the past 2 years, because they may have reconsidered buying the product or paying as much as they did. So, of course, they're claiming that Ford knew and didn't tell people. Ford has provided notice of these issues and defects by numerous complaints filed against it, as well as its own internal knowledge derived from testing and internal expert analysis. That's according to allegations in the lawsuit. Ford's conduct and deceptive omission were intended to induce customers to believe that defective vehicles were safe adequately designed, and adequately manufactured, the lawsuit says. Meanwhile, a 2022 Mach-E starts price-wise at $44,000. So these aren't cheap cars. The lawsuit asks Ford to explain how an over-the-air software update fixes a hardware mechanical failure with the connectors. The attorney told the Free Press, "That doesn't make sense to me. I'm afraid there's something else going on here. Does Ford have the connectors? Can they not get them? Are they too expensive? Why were smaller ones put in? Why did they make this mistake?" Now, Ford spokesperson told the Free Press on Monday, "The software update is meant to protect the contactors. If any customers experience this issue, the hardware replacement is covered under warranty." Situation is not like a broken taillight or rubber falling off a door jamb, however, according to the attorney. Those are things that happen all the time with recalls. We're talking about 50,000 cars that can just turn off unexpectedly. At that point, it's time for a lawsuit. Ford has reported to federal regulators that the company saw 286 customer warranty claims in North America between July 13th of 2021 and May 31st of 2022. That was related to an open or welded contactor. Ford wrote that it was not aware of any reports of accident or injury related to this condition. Then in June, the automaker issued a recall affecting 48,000 Mach-E vehicles built during a 2-year time period that could lose power while driving or not start. The action also included a dealer hold on any vehicles not yet delivered to customers. So there's more to this story than what I just told you. The story is quite lengthy. Phoebe Walhard does great work. She's often uncovering all kinds of interesting stuff about the car makers. She was the one, basically, who brought to the public attention how serious the dual clutch transmission problem was at Ford Motor Company. And she was the one who got her hands on internal memos and documents where there were engineers writing before the cars were released to the public that these transmissions are bad. There's a problem here. We should get this fixed before we sell these cars. And so here's the issue. If you've got a Mustang Mach-E, a 21 or a 22, it might have a problem with some of the componentry where it might just shut off or it might not start in the first place. And shutting off unexpectedly, as you can imagine, is a dangerous thing. Now, I'm not 100% certain what happens in an electric car as you're driving down the road if you literally just shut off power to the motor. Does it come to a really, really fast stop or does it coast? Because obviously you're driving along in a vehicle, let's say it's a manual transmission, and the engine dies. You can very quickly hit the clutch, throw it in neutral, and coast for a while, depending on how fast you're going. If you're driving along with an automatic transmission car and your engine dies, you can put it into neutral and coast likewise. But I've been in vehicles before that if you put them into neutral and coast, they don't quite coast because there's other stuff happening with like the drivetrain and so on. I'm thinking about like certain types of ATVs and so on. But simply put, I don't know what happens with a Mustang Mach-E if you're going down the freeway at 60 miles an hour and you kill the power to the vehicle. Completely kill the power to the vehicle. And that sounds to me like it very well could be a safety issue. So a couple things, one of which is obviously the repair then would be mandated by NHTSA as free to you. Whether it's under warranty or not, doesn't matter. They got to do it. But number two, the question is, if you own a Mustang Mach-E, have you experienced any problems with power outages? And that's the things I've now heard from people who got these vehicles and have had problems with them. So I think they said something like 49,000 of them are out there. 48,924 are out there. And if you've got one, the question is, one, has this happened to you? And if it hasn't, two, be prepared in case it does. It might just be to plant the idea in your head, watch for this, be careful because it might happen, okay? You might want to follow NHTSA, nhtsa.gov. Go there and see what they say about this because they'll have the most recent information from Ford Motor Company with respect to the recalls and technical service bulletins, if there are any. And of course, if you've had problems, you got to take it to your dealership and have them look at it. And keep in mind that the mere fact that a class action lawsuit's been filed against Ford in California does not mean that you are out of luck if you've got a defective one. So anytime there's a class action, you've got the right to decide whether you want to participate in it. Now, some class actions are opt-out, meaning that you are automatically in the class unless you choose to opt out of it. There are other class actions where they'll announce and say, if you want in, you opt in. This is still so early right here that if you have a defective Ford Mustang Mach-E and you're worried about this, if your car has had repairs, then you need to take a look at your state's lemon laws. Every state's got a lemon law. They vary a bit from state to state, but generally speaking, they trigger off of two things. One is if you have to bring it into the shop a bunch of times, a series of times for the same problem. The second one is usually if it goes to the shop and sits there unrepaired for a length of time. Those numbers of times and the length of times vary from state to state, but you can find the information online. It's quite easy. And you might want to consider doing that if you've had this problem. So there you go. But if you own a Mustang Mach-E, simply be aware of this as a potential problem. And if you've had problems, document them as well as you can and make some noise about going into the dealership and demanding that they repair it if you've got a problem. So there you go. That's a story from Phoebe Wall-Howard. 2021 and 2022 Mustang Mach-E owners slapped Ford with a federal lawsuit over a safety defect. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. Be sure to follow your own advice before dispensing it to others.